This is the Hot Take Hockey Podcast with your hosts, Lucas and John Viveiros.
Episode 36 of the Hot Take Hockey Podcast. Lucas, myself, John. It's been a minute. We were on a little, I don't even call it a break because a couple things happened in back-to-back weeks and obviously heavy into playoff talk. So, I mean, you guys saw my reactions. Lucas and I have been talking, but finally an epi out and we're going to be getting a lot of cool guests for the off season. So yeah, Lucas, man, let's just, we won't bury the lead this time. Let's just, let's pick it up on the Leaf talk where we left it. And, obviously, the Leafs getting booed out of the second round, but that's not really what is, being told these days. Obviously, it seems a far away. I'll put it this way. It seems a far away from that first round win. So Lucas, man, how are you feeling? Dubas out. Shanny's running the show right now. Just a lot of stuff on Leafland.
I'm feeling good, man. I'm feeling good. Leafland's been a soap opera the last little bit here. I feel like every day there's just new news coming to light. And, you know, I'll start there and I'll just say that's more so, I think, a reason why Brendan Shanahan was so, detail-oriented when he was going through the timeline of the events that happened over the season and into the last few weeks once the Leafs were eliminated. We won't bury the lead. Well, I guess we'll just jump right into that and talk about the fallout of the Leafs moving on from Kyle Dubas, looking at other options for general manager. And I know that, right before we hopped on, Drager, who sometimes, he's an insider, but sometimes it can go one way or another, but it's looking like Brad Treliving, the Leafs are talking to him. I'll just give my quick thoughts on like the whole Dubas thing. And I think that, Kyle Dubas, if you were, pro keeping this team together and believed in the majority of this team, you probably wanted Dubas to stick around because he was so close with the players. And, no doubt that this will impact, the decisions that players make. Obviously, money talks. So no matter who's at the top of the food chain, I'm sure money can speak a lot louder than who's there necessarily. But as of right now, feeling very uneasy in terms of the future of this team. This offseason feels much different than the ones prior in the sense that, we don't know what this team's going to look like in October, and we certainly have no idea what this team's going to look like into the 2024-2025 season when Matthews and Nylander will need new deals if they're still around, right? So, yeah, I mean, I'm nervous for the outfall, and I do want change, but at the same time, I'm not slamming the panic button and thinking a million things need to happen to this team. I think they were a really good team, and I think Florida, the longer they go on this run and the more you see them win games, you do start to think that this was one of those teams that it's just been destiny for them this year, really. I mean, up 3-0 at this time of this recording, they're up 3-0 versus Carolina. Really impressed with them so far, but yeah, I mean, that's my initial reaction off the hop, John. I mean, we can go back and forth on some comments and some things that have come out, but I was on the pro Dubas camp, so I am a little bit sad to see him go, just because I thought he's a really smart hockey mind, and for the most part, I think he made some great moves. If you look at any GM's history, I think you'll find trades and signings that didn't work out. Dubas is no different than that, but overall, especially the last, I'd say, year, I thought Kyle Dubas was very, very strong in the moves that he did and the way he set up the team for success this year, and it just didn't work.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I mean, my initial reaction was I was pretty down bad about the Dubas stuff, but I think for me, it's changed a little bit just in terms of like research, in terms of looking into things and just hearing from other people. I also do feel like with Dubas and just kind of what's come out now, and again, a lot of stuff is speculation, a lot of stuff is rumors, but there is some validity to some stuff, is that I feel like, Lucas, so you just talked about like the last year in terms of the moves. Mm-hmm. I do feel like that last year, the moves, that wasn't typical Dubas. That wasn't what we've seen in the past, whether it was like the O'Reilly move or the Jake McCabe move or the Luke Shen move, like moves like that, where it's like, and I even actually heard Viveiros say it today, was like, if you go back to the Dubas type deals, it was like these deals that no one really agreed with at the time that obviously ended up like, it was like going for the undersized guys. Like obviously the Malgin Marchment one's going to go down as like one of the worst ones, obviously, as like the poster boy, but like more significantly, the late Brian Marchment, rest in peace, he was really close with Brendan Shanahan, and Viveiros outlined that. And I was just thinking, okay, that's a clear example of like Shanahan definitely wouldn't have been the pusher for that move, like trading his good buddy's son in a move like that. And another scenario, I mean, we've seen Dubas time and time again go for Sioux Greyhounds guys, especially as recent as the Matt Murray. And it's as ironic as it comes that Nick Cousins scores the winner and he's a former Sioux Greyhound against the Leafs. Anyways, my point is up until Lucas, literally February or March, to me, we always saw those Dubas type deals. And then all of a sudden, Ryan O'Reilly, Jake McCabe, Luke Shen. So I wonder if that became a problem in this season. I wonder if it became a problem of sense of control. And that's why all this stuff is coming out now of like, when Dubas came back, wanting that sense of control. I mean, man, I just look at it as, I think there's a balance. I like Dubas a lot. I like a lot of things that he did. And I like everything he kind of stands for, I would say, in terms of morally, or at least from what I know. But I think in terms of balance, I just feel like the culture in this room starts from the top. And in some way, it got kind of separated with Shanahan and Dubas, where they weren't in the same mindset, weren't in the same direction. And I just feel like overall, if you look at the scenario of where we're at right now, it shouldn't have occurred that way. Like it was like, we're talking about one of the biggest franchises in the National Hockey League. And it went from winning a first round to airing dirty laundry in a press conference and to the guy getting fired within like 4 days of saying, we're going to bring him back as GM. Like all of that just shouldn't have happened. Like I look across pro sports, that never should happen the way it went down. So obviously there was a power struggle to some. I hate the speculation, but as simple as there was disagreeing in terms of decision making and power, and we don't know really the rest, to be honest.
Yeah. At the the rest of it, we're speculating, like you said, but I do agree with you. I fully believe that there was some level of friction, we'll call it, between Shanahan, or maybe it was Dubas and the board. Obviously there was some sort of tension there, and that arose the last week, and the way it fell out. I feel like that just, especially in a market like Toronto, shows, it should never be that way, and it really gets overblown and gets the media obviously on top of it. And I think that overall, just that is a very sensitive topic now, because I feel like for the last, let's say since Shanahan took over, the last 9 years, we, for once in our lives, kind of felt like the right people had the keys to the car, right? Like we felt like this team was constantly, being built the right way, and communication in the organization was good. And it just seems like that's all kind of fizzled out now. And it feels like we're back. There's a feeling of it being back to the days prior to Shanahan, Babcock, that sort of era, right? Yeah. And that's where I get concerned, because we've seen many moons ago what that organization looked like at the time. But yeah, man, like, I mean, it shouldn't be overly surprising, I guess, that he's not back. I think my brain wasn't ready to accept that, but it shouldn't be overly surprising. I mean, he had no contract going after this year, right? So it could have went either way, and it's gone this way. But yeah, I mean, in regards to the autonomy, the question, what we were just talking about, and Dubas asking for more control, it'll be interesting to see if another team offers him that type of position, right? Like Pittsburgh and Fenway Sports Group. Yeah,
I was also just going to, so what you said, 100%. But my thing is also, I do feel like, when I talk about like the Sioux Greyhound moves or all these moves, it seems like Dubas had a higher level of control. Like it seems like it kind of happened in the opposite way. Like it's like an inexperienced GM, like a kid. You got the child lock on, you've got full attention, and let, the individual blossom. I mean, that's kind of what should have happened with Dubas. Instead, it was like a reverse effect. I mean, maybe that happened at the very beginning when he got appointed the GM, but it was like, I felt like Dubas did have a lot of control at least from what we saw and the type of deals that were being made. I mean, go back to watching Brendan Shanahan play hockey. A lot of the moves that have happened in past years, to me, those are not Shanahan type deals. As I already said, in the last year, I feel like things shifted where like, I feel like there was like some child locks like occurring here. Like there was some heavy interference happening. And regardless, agree or disagree, I mean, the Leafs did win a round. And if you want to talk about they faced a hot team, I mean, you're always going to face great teams in the playoffs. It's just, so at the end of the day, we can talk about being goal lead. We can talk about all this stuff. It's just, to me,
we can talk about how the Leafs always lose to a team that makes the final and whatever.
Yeah, that happens quite a bit. Of course. Yep. But then we could say the same about, I mean, then Bruins fans can make the same excuses here. We go, oh,
Yeah.
Bruins, we don't need to make changes because we played against the team that made it to the cup final. So all I'm saying is that obviously things changed, and I don't like the excuses, but obviously the cultural like change starts from the top. So, I mean, man, I think seeing it as real as it is now that Dubas is not the GM, we have to have a serious discussion about the bigger players in this team not being part of this team going forward. I know people have been naive, Lucas, and I've talked about it in the past. Like I've made videos and people have ripped me where it's like, bro, this is clickbait. Like you have no idea what you're talking about. Like Matthews is not going anywhere. And it's like, maybe that is true. Maybe that's still true that he's not going to go anywhere. But I think we're at a point right now where dismissing those discussions like can't be happening anymore. And it's specifically in the organization. I mean, you've got to take this seriously. As much as you want to criticize the culture that they've created in terms of comfortability, in terms of lovey-dovey, friendships, all these stuff that they've created, essentially, criticize it all you want. But now that Dubas is out of the picture, it makes Austin Matthews leaving the Toronto Maple Leafs that much more real. So criticize it. If you want to criticize it, go ahead. It doesn't change the fact that Austin Matthews was more likely to remain a Toronto Maple Leaf a week ago, in my opinion, than it is today. And again, you can disagree. I disagree. To me, you shouldn't be playing for a team because of the general manager or for a coach. You should be, Lucas, that logo right next to you, you should be playing for the logo. You should be playing for the team. You should be playing, you know what, at the bare minimum, I'll put it this way. You should be playing for the guys that you play with on the ice more than guys behind the scenes that are just making you comfortable or whatever. So at the end of the day, I mean, there were certain guys in the second round that clearly were not playing for each other, that were not doing certain things that you win in the Stanley Cup playoffs. So you know what? Yeah. I mean, I'm just kind of rambling on, but my point in saying that is this has become a real discussion. So if you don't want to trade, if you don't want to see your team trade one of these big four, okay. But I think if you go into next season with no extension to Austin Matthews or William Nylander, you are out of your mind. That is going to be one of the dumbest things. We saw what happened with Johnny Gaudreau in Calgary, and Calgary quickly learned that you cannot take those things for granted. And the Matthew Tkachuk, obviously that trade's a disaster as it currently stands, but at least they got pieces. At least they got something.
Yeah. John Tavares and the Islanders, obviously.
Yeah.
John, I agree. I agree with you. I feel like, you know, to say that a player just wants to play in a particular city because of the GM who's in charge, I think is a little bit naive. And I think, you know, money talks, like I said off the top. Having said that, you know, Dubas was very vocal with these players in terms of, you know, showing his belief in them. And I felt like it was, they knew exactly sort of where he stood on them. Right. And so now that there's going to be a new guy coming in, could be a completely different outlook. And that's what makes the doubt and the uncomfortability with a Matthews wanting to sign here